We're on week 3, and we're diving into how to scale content without scaling our headcount. Whether you're a solo founder or just a lean marketing team and you're tired of staring at that blank document, we hate the blank page problem. What we're going to cover in this session is strategies, real tools, and then we're going to roll up our sleeves with some hands-on content pipeline creation using DIFY. You all should have received the instructions in advance to set up those accounts. And if at any time you have any technical difficulties with DIFY or along the way, just send me a private DM and I could try to get you set up if you are in a breakout room separately. All right, so with that in mind, let me get into it. I think we all know and agree that content really is still the backbone of trust and discovery, especially in any founder-led or early stage go-to-market. But at the same time, we know that content can be slow, it can be expensive, and it's usually the first thing to fall off the to-do list. And I am guilty of that as well. Um, I think this is where generative AI has a real opportunity to shine. Right? It's not just about replacing the content. I think it's about giving you a first draft in a few seconds so that you could spend more time thinking, editing, strategizing, distributing. So the whole goal of this is not to shortcut the quality and produce more AI slop into the world. It's about skipping as many bottlenecks as possible so that you can get your original thoughts and your lived experience out into the world so that people who are your audience can ideally find it and resonate with it. And if you can do those two things, then you start building the foundation of trust so that they keep coming back for more content, thought leadership, and eventually learn about your product and why you're so great. All right, so the goals for today. It's real simple. We're going to see how quickly you can generate long form and short form content with generative AI. We're going to learn the magic of atomization, which is just the idea of turning one piece of content into 5 or 10. And then we're going to show you how to build a lightweight pipeline using a tool like DIFY so that content just starts flowing with less friction. And like I said, we're going to roll up our sleeves. In fact, today, I'm going to try to give us the bio break 10 minutes early at 9:50 so that when our facilitators arrive at 10:10, or rather at 10, we just get right into it so that we preserve that precious hands-on time. So let's go. All right. Before we automate, we need to aim. And this simple framework we saw last week, I just want to bring it up again to remind everyone why we're here, why we're doing this automation piece. And it starts with understanding that you have an audience, you need a message, you need to have a specific channel, a format, and a frequency. And that's going to help you create relevant content and avoid a bunch of ineffective content that isn't aligned to these 5 key things that you are interested in your particular business. For many of you, you should already have this given the last 2 weeks that we have been working on. And if you don't, that's okay. It's an opportunity to use generative AI to help you dial in each of these 5 elements so that you can keep iterating and learning as we go. So, with that framework and reminder, I'm going to jump right into the case studies. And then after that, we're going to see how they accomplish what they accomplished. My first case study is Workfellow. And they were growing pretty fast, but they really needed more blog content, right? They needed to be found by people who were searching for a specific pain point. And the reality is that as a very early stage startup, they couldn't afford to hire a full-time content team. So they implemented a hybrid workflow. They had AI for draft generation using SEO prompts, and they had human editors for the insights and the tone. And this is what allowed them to triple their output, where they saw a 22x lift in traffic. So the key thing here is that this is a classic AI plus human model, right? They didn't ask the AI to replace the writers. They asked it to remove that blank page problem that we talked about. And from that, as I mentioned, they saw the increase in traffic. They saw the increase in their blog publishing cadence, which ties back to a theme I mentioned last week. The more content you have and the more analytics you have about the content you're producing is effectively a way to identify and test whether or not topic A, topic B, topic N is getting engagement or not. And the ones that are getting engagement, you feed that back in, you double down, and you keep going deeper on the paths that are resonating with that audience. I want to emphasize one thing. AI didn't create the traffic, but it accelerated the path for the traffic to arrive at their site. And that's the important thing for you to make sure you're aware of. Now, let me go to the second case study. This one is Smart Cocoon. Now, they had a common problem, great product, not a big marketing team. And by using generative AI, they turned that weekly blog post cadence into LinkedIn and Instagram content using some structured prompts. Now, this will sound familiar because that's what you're going to do in our facilitated session today, right? Think about all the FAQs that you have, the use cases, your case studies, anything that you have can essentially be turned into these atomized social posts that don't directly sell your business, but introduce your content into the stream of the conversation happening with your audience. So, this team right here, they use ChatGPT to generate that weekly blog post, repurpose it. They leverage those structured prompts, and they, again, human in the loop, edited for tone and for clarity. And the result of all of this is that they saw an increase in the amount of social engagement. So the thing is that small businesses often don't think they have the resources to do this kind of content at scale. But what if AI could be your first content hire to help you with that? And I can tell you that I'm using this approach a lot myself. If you see any of my LinkedIn content, and if you don't, why not? You should follow. But more importantly, really the gen of the seed of what I'm often posting is tied to a customer conversation I've had, to a discovery chat, and then I use those and try to bring the transcript of my conversation into a custom prompt that I've created to try to find kind of interesting nuggets that my audience might care about. Then I turn those into social posts, blog posts, etc. And you could do the same. Okay, so this is your stack for scale. And I mentioned Site Mechanic on this site. We're very fortunate to have the founder of Site Mechanic with us today, and that's Travis. I'll introduce him in a moment so we can get into it. But the idea here is to really use this so-called high-po, low-co strategy, which means high potential, low competition keyword strategy, so that you're targeting all of the long tail keywords that if you were doing it as a human individual contributor might take months of effort and work to identify and then to write all the content for the essentially infinite amount of long tail keywords that exist. So that is what is possible when you combine it with generative AI, right? Using it for clustering and identification of those long tail keywords, and then using those and feeding them forward into a pipeline that generates the individual blog outlines, the blog posts, the metadata for your SEO, and so forth. So that's what I want to jump into. Let's go first to, let me go to Travis. Hey, Travis.
Oh, good morning.
Good morning. So this is my friend Travis Beck, founder of Site Mechanic. And as I understand it, Travis, Site Mechanic is the content factory for SEO creation, born from a pain point you had yourself as a business owner, doing all of this stuff the old-fashioned way over the last, what is it, 10 years or so?
Yeah, 20.
20 years. So give us maybe a quick introduction of your time at Paracable and what led you to create Site Mechanic.
Yeah, I'm a bit of a serial entrepreneur, especially in the age of AI. It started to ramp up quite a bit. Each one of these little projects I needed content for, just like you were talking about, and it was always like last on the list after many features and Stripe integration and everything you have to do to get a service up and running. So I thought, is there a way that I can create a system that will do all the steps for me just from putting in my URL for my homepage, just figure out what my business is, who I sell to, what my strategic points are, do the keyword research, come up with the titles and the outline for an article, and then write the article. So that was the idea, and out of that came Site Mechanic, which is sort of like the full pipeline for that.
Yeah, so I want us to just walk through the pipeline. Now, of course, anyone could use Site Mechanic, but I want to dive into the sort of what's under the hood, what's happening, what was the thinking as you built it that shows that workflow that looks so effortless when you're just a user of the product, but that would be essentially what someone would have to do in order to recreate what's happening. And I think this really encapsulates that approach. Is that right?
Yeah, right. So in order for like if you hire me as an SEO, I just sort of looked at it from that perspective. It's like, what do I need to do to understand what you need and create the content that will drive traffic for you? And I just built out that automation piece by piece. I think the most important aspect is keyword research, right? Generally, if anyone's ever done keyword research before, you kind of narrow it down to a few thousand keywords, and then you have a giant list of all of these different metrics like cost per click and competition and keyword difficulty and all these different things, and you're trying to pick out the best keywords to target. And then once you have the best keywords to target, then you need to cram that keyword into a compelling title that will get people to click on it. And that's really what takes the longest to do. I found a data provider for really good SEO content, like keyword research. And I just built, I wasn't a keyword research expert, but it's in the machine. So I just pulled it out of ChatGPT and created a keyword research prompt expert. And it's not cheap. The keyword data isn't cheap, but if you have paying customers, it's fine as long as it's within your budget. But taking a large group of potential keywords and filtering it down to these are the ones you need to target was the end goal of that system, and I think it came out pretty well. It
And
saves
just
hours and
for
hours.
for those of us who are not steeped into the world of SEO, a tool like I think you're referring to something like Ahrefs or
Yeah, SEMrush.
SEMrush. You sign up for one of these tools, and this is irrespective of using generative AI. This is just SEO 101 best practices, right? You need to understand what keywords are related to your business, your content, and these tools essentially give you that list and the data that says keyword number one has this much traffic, this much competition around it. Here's the ability or likelihood of how possible it may be for you to rank in the first page of the search engine results. Is that fair?
Yep, that's it. So keyword difficulty, cost per click, and competition are sort of the key metrics you're looking at when you're writing SEO content. Targeting those very specific keywords that people are already searching for. That's what's important.
And then the spark of genius behind Site Mechanic is what if we could have an agent step through this human process of, okay, here's my website. What keywords are related to the website? Step two. Then cross-referencing that against the list of keywords from a tool like SEMrush, and then using ChatGPT to analyze the competitiveness, the cost per click, the likelihood of ranking, and then whittling that down from, let's say, 1,000 potential long tail keywords to maybe 20 or 30 that are really narrow and targeted. And then moving on to step three, where you are generating titles and eventually articles. So maybe talk to us about step three and four.
Yeah. So once you've narrowed down the set of keywords for the business, then you need compelling titles. There's kind of like a framework for clickable titles, and that's generally like big collections, a top 10 list, top 30 list, top 10 ways to top 20 ways to ultimate guides, different things like that. So I sort of give it a collection of types of titles to choose from, and it brings back a selection from that entire list based on the keywords and making sure the keyword is in the title. And that's step one. And then from the title, you expand it out into an outline. And in this in Site Mechanic, it's all you're in the loop the entire way. So the outline comes back, and you can edit the outline. You can add new sections to it, remove sections from it, but the outline guides the process because it has to be broken down into small chunks in order to get a large article. I think that if you're trying to generate content, whether it's through Site Mechanic or any other system, if you give it, here's what I want you to write and here's the outline, you'll get about 600 words. If you want anything more than that, you have to do it one little section at a time. And the outline is how you kind of tie it all together because they don't know that they're doing this in parallel. They're not really talking to each other. You're orchestrating it. And
And
then
they is the LLM.
oh yeah, the different LLM conversations. Yeah.
Yep. And then so that's kind of this slide. You were talking about some of the title patterns or templates, right? Seven something, how to do something, the ultimate something. And
Yeah.
then from there, we talked about how you do the outline creation. From there, you move on to the draft generation step. And I think this last part was what I thought was also a really interesting piece to all of it, which was to create a quality check, not just via a human in the loop, but also via a model itself that is trying to detect plagiarism and bodiness, sort of the AI slop that, infinite M dashes and semicolons that ChatGPT loves to introduce.
Yeah, and there's specific cliches that it loves to lean on, like journey and adventure cliches. And
Game
I think I,
changing.
I think I crucial. Everything's crucial. I spent the most time like training that out of the responses. I saw so many articles every day and the same sort of cliche, generic starter phrases. So yeah, that was a big part of the humanization process is getting rid of the AI slop that you see with just really basically prompted content.
Well, I have to say that is a revolutionary idea. Uh,
Yeah.
God, it loves revolutionary. So
Yeah.
the humanization piece I think is really important. And just yesterday, in fact, I saw a piece that the new GPT o3, o4 models have perhaps incidentally digital watermarks in the output. Did you see this? Anybody see this by raise of hands? No. Apparently, if you copy paste out or use the copy command in the chat window, it has Unicode invisible text in your output like essentially ASCII hex codes that a machine could read, but a user cannot. And they are different ways of representing space and new lines and carriage returns and all kinds of things like that, which might allow systems in the future to essentially detect whether something is AI written. ChatGPT, OpenAI officially responded that that was not intentional, that that's a sort of artifact of training on data that is now based on so much GPT generated content around the world that it has sort of picked up on that as a recurring issue. And I know, Travis, we talked about that. You had a really interesting insight about how you went through the humanization process by effectively lobotomizing the models and going to older models so that they wouldn't be influenced by
Yeah.
the latest training data. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, there's a certain cutoff point in AI happened in 2020, late 2023, I think. Like you said, Chat GPT 3 came out, and from then on out, the internet just became AI generated content more and more and more. As the LLMs try to get larger, they're absorbing that same content back into it. And as I would try different humanization techniques, the models after a certain period in time were just incapable of getting better scores than these previous models. And it's because it's my conclusion is because it hadn't consumed AI written content, it had only consumed human written content.
Very interesting. Let me go to this last section here, which is that last step of publishing. So after all of this content is created, it's been humanized, And now we need to get it into our CMS. People here are likely using Webflow, Framer, WordPress, etc. My understanding is that at least on Site Mechanic, I see here you have direct integration so that that happens seamlessly, just posts out. Anything to add or anything kind of really noteworthy here in this step?
Yeah, there's like a bulk creation process, so it will automatically publish. You can just set up a queue of titles from a content plan that it works through and run them and have them published on a schedule. So that's sort of like the factory aspect of it. Once you set it up and it knows your site and you've done the keyword research, you can create a huge list and just run it and it'll push it directly to Shopify, directly to WordPress, Wix, Ghost. There's so many integrations.
Okay, cool. Well, I want to go through two more slides because I think you put a lot of thought and great content here. These were suggestions and ideas that you had based on working on this for yourself and building it out.
Yeah.
Share some of the kind of big takeaways here, the lessons learned that are worth sharing with the team here as they develop their own pipelines, whether they use a custom GPT or kind of babysit the whole process themselves or use Site Mechanic. What are the lessons here about prompting?
Yeah, the big two things I learned is using imperative language. You can't be flimsy with the models. So you can't, in your prompting specifically, don't use words like you should or could you. Don't ask, tell with imperative words like you must do this exactly like this. Everywhere you can. I went through one time and oh man, there's a whole catalog of prompts and I just looked for those types of wishy-washy language that when we're talking to a friend, they understand it, but the AI doesn't. And that removed so many different errors of it not fully following directions down the line because there's a lot of complicated processes. And then just breaking up your longer processes into the smallest bite-sized chunk possible. It is the best at small processes, and you can chain those together to get more and more data outputs for what you're needing for the ultimate result of the workflow. But make sure each one is only taking a very, very small bite. Um, I think another thing is if you're developing with like a full code system like this and not like DIFY or a low code tool, they keep track of cost for you. But when you're tied directly to the API, you're writing code, there's nothing keeping track of cost for you. That's like one of the first things you need to build as a developer is an engine that tracks your tokens. You have a dashboard that shows you live feed, what you just spent generating those 10 articles so you could test, because sometimes it's $4 and you're about to do it another 10 times and you didn't expect to spend 40 to $400 today in development fees, which is a whole new paradigm we're entering into. I've never in 25 years as a developer had to like pay to do my development, but that's where we are now. So you have to make sure that you are keeping tabs on the token counts.
And one other part that I thought was really poignant in our conversations, and it's in the deck that you prepared, are some of the just takeaways you've had about using AI for content creation. I think it's
Yeah.
interesting that you built the SEO content factory, and then maybe it's a perhaps a what have we wrought moment with respect to what we build. So tell us a little bit about this.
It's true. Yeah. I built this whole pipeline, this system, AI content creation, automation at scale. And at the end of it, had sort of a change of heart on the idea of automated AI content on the internet. And I was thinking, like, is that the future internet that I want, where everything I search for is written by an AI that consume content written by another AI that summarize content written by another AI? And I don't think that's the world anyone really wants. But what we do want is to be more productive and to get the burden of this process out of our way. And what I've learned is keyword research, beautiful, help you get titles, beautiful, give you a working uh, outline to go with. But if AI just writes the entire thing, AI has no human perspective. It has no emotional connection to what you're speaking about. And if you want conversions from your content, then it needs to engage with your audience on an emotional level. And you need to have a personal experience to pull from in order to write content like that. So ultimately, the best SEO content is still human written, perspective driven, emotional content that actually connects, and it always will be. Solutions like Site Mechanic are like should be a stopgap to uh, I'm over here, I'm working on a workflow for the core piece of our business, and I know I need to have something up so that the robots are catching keywords for me. And this is how you get started. But you need to go through and refine and have engaging emotional connections with genuine expertise is crucial in order for long-term success with SEO. I think a lot of people have you see winners on Twitter using this type of process, but they're only ever short-term games because I've been in it for a while. I used it myself on several sites, and yeah, long term, it's same game as it always was.
So I think that ties really well to a topic and a theme that we've been discovering throughout our sessions, which is, I think you said it beautifully, Travis, right? We all want to be more productive, and generative AI can help us unlock some of that speed, some of that productivity. But the most important thing is to bring our own lived experiences, our authentic perspectives, and deep empathy with the user about what pain you genuinely believe that they have. And the more you can create a sort of impedance match or resonance there, the much better you will be. So, Travis, if you can stick around for some questions and answers in a sec, I'm going to have a few more slides to go through um, because I want to share perhaps a slightly different perspective. When you're not using a tool like Site Mechanic, you can approximate everything that Travis just said for yourself using something like a custom GPT. So in this approach, really you're configuring your custom GPT to do some of the steps that Travis mentioned. And it's not automatic in the sense that you just give it your website and you have a content factory, but it is creating each of those 5 steps that Travis mentioned as 5 different custom GPTs, putting those instructions in however you want to create those prompts, and then hitting it, getting an output, and then taking that output and feeding it to the next one. So it's a slightly more manual process, but there are trade-offs. The pros are that you have an opportunity to infuse it with your perspective, your lived experience at each of those checkpoints along the way. And some more than others will be relevant. You may not be putting a lot of human sort of lived experience authenticity to the keyword selection, but certainly for the outline, the title, the content is really where it's going to be. And then the other approach, if you want something a little more automated, is DIFY, which is what we're going to do in our facilitated session today. And in this section, you're going to see how you can take as inputs a topic, your ideal customer persona, a brand voice, and then feed it through a multi-step process to produce an outline, a blog article. You can enhance it with the steps that Travis showed us today, which is to produce the titles. You can add an input, which is to input all the different keywords that are relevant and so forth. So you can use this as a starting point for your facilitated sessions to go deeper on that. Okay, so we also want to cover the atomization piece. And I think this is where the magic happens, Travis. I think I probably begged you at least a couple of times to convert the content factory into a social media atomizer as well. And the idea is that each blog post that gets generated should be turned into a LinkedIn post, a tweet thread, an email teaser, a Reddit answer, and so forth. And the trick is that you have to be platform aware in terms of the tone, the way that people write on these different platforms, and that's hard to do. And so if you just completely automate it without a lot of thought into how you should be changing the content so that it resonates in each platform, then you're going to come off like a bot and people are going to not resonate with it, especially on Reddit, right? They will actively poo-poo you. And so you have to be very mindful of that. And this is, I think, where the challenge is. The more platforms that you want to distribute to, the more human in the loop checks you're going to want to have. And at some point, you're going to run into a bottleneck and you're going to have to make a trade-off between, well, do I check every piece of content? Site Mechanic is going to produce 1,000 blog posts per period, and each blog post gets turned into 5 atomized social content. Now I have 5,000 pieces of content to check. I think we're getting to the point where the AIs generate content so much faster and so much more prolifically than our ability to review it and put our stamp of human authenticity on it. And I know that's happening in the coding side as well. I have that challenge when I'm vibe coding. I'm having a hard time keeping up with the amount of content that it's producing. All right. So I'm going to just show a quick demo of what we're going to cover in today's facilitated session so that everyone's on the same page. Let me click into this and we will get into it. And then in the meantime, if anyone has any questions, you can go ahead and start throwing them into the chat. Let me get a volunteer. If someone can just give me a topic for a blog post, their ICP and a brand voice, put that in the chat. That'd be super helpful. I'm going to see if I already have a test run just in case. If you haven't seen this in the email that we sent out, this is the DIFY workflow. It's pretty simple. I've got a start block that takes in 3 inputs, a topic, an ICP, and a brand voice. It's going to send it to the next LLM block, and it's going to say you're a content marketer and blog writer, create an outline based on this ICP and topic, give me an output format. And then it's going to feed that forward into the next block, which is now write the full article using a tone that matches this particular brand voice. And then we're going to gather that text as an output here. And then as a bonus, I threw in a parallel process, which is remix the blog post and turn it into a LinkedIn draft for this particular audience and this brand voice. One thing I want you to note, I should have mentioned it in the email that you all received. I have written extremely tight and small, ineffectual prompts in this section. Why? Because I think a proper prompt might be a lot longer and it's hard for you to read it and quickly capture what is going on. So use these as a starting point for what I am trying to convey to you. You need to make these your own. You need to expand these further. And to help you do that, you should be asking ChatGPT, I'm trying to accomplish this. Here is the prompt that I have so far. How can I improve this prompt? So use those meta prompting techniques to enhance the prompts that you will actually put in here. Let me go to the chat and see if anyone has volunteered, and I'll just grab one. Let's see, create an article. Scale. Let's go to Michael. I've got yours in here. Thank you for volunteering. I'm going to hit run. Blog article about the importance of accounting procedures. Target audience is, I'm just going to take that part separate. And the brand voice is this. So you can see here, I put out those 3 different sections. I'm going to start the run, and it's going through the different steps right here. Under the tracing section, you can see what step it's on and what it's doing. It has a particular input that it is processing. It will show you that input. This is what I just threw in. And then the output, it's created the blog outline. All right. You can see that there. It's not exactly human readable, but rest assured it's being sent now to that next LLM that you see here that's currently running. And that is complete. Let's go to that one. And now we see what the output looks like, the importance of counting procedures, etc. All right. So in the full post, let's go to results. Here it is. Full result. I'm going to copy this and I'm going to put this into a doc so that we can see it. Oop. Just a lot easier to see it like this. Oh, wow. Okay. Well, need some help here with the formatting. I was expecting this just to pop out as Markdown, but you get the idea. We'll be able to see the titles here. It's got the intros. I will send this around so you can see it. But the key part here is to recognize that it is writing this all out. And what I should have done to improve this is I should have asked it to produce it in Markdown as an output. so that this could have been an easy copy paste from Markdown, and it would have been human readable, structured, so that we can consume it, edit further, and so forth. But let me go back to the DIFY flow and look at the LinkedIn post as well. So let's see that one. Looks like here's our LinkedIn post. Throw this in here. I'll share this document as well so that everyone can see it. And to Travis's point, Diffie does give you a usage column. I know I mentioned this last time, but that flow essentially cost 1.1 pennies to do. So well worth your time and effort, I think. All right, so you can see here, Michael, the post that it produced. You could already tell that this needs a lot of prompting help, right? I would probably tell it never use emojis. I hate emojis in my writing. It loves to use emojis. I don't know where it gets that from, but uh, this is the idea. Another thing I would probably do to enhance this prompt further is I would tell it a specific character limit that I'm asking it to hit. Various different platforms have certain character limits, Twitter being the most famous, or X, but LinkedIn does too. I think it's maybe 1,500 characters, something like that. And so something like this can get rather long, right? You need to constrain it further. So that's what you're going to be doing in your sessions. And really, this should have been a result that we can kind of see here. So it's easy to consume, but we can go into that in our sessions. Okay, so let's get back to the core content. What I want to start kind of landing the plane on is we've been talking about blog creation, social creation, and then there is the kind of content that is personalization, but at a level of scale that humans today generally don't do. And what I'm talking about is using something like Clay combined with an LLM to generate really one-to-one personalized emails with custom intros based on their roles or recent news about their company. And then on the other side, you could also create one to few experiences using tools like Webflow or WordPress tied to something like Clay, again, to create personalized headlines, calls to actions, depending on who visits that particular website. Many, many, many years ago, I tried and did launch a product that was website personalization for account-based marketing. The marketing team would give us a spreadsheet from Google Sheets, and each row on that spreadsheet was a different target company that they wanted to prepare a landing page for or website for. And each of the columns would then be different elements on their website. The H1, the title, the call to action button. And what our JavaScript tag would do, our technology would do, is when a visitor came to the website, we would identify what company they were from based on cookies, local storage, or their IP address, and say, oh, you're from Salesforce. Go to the database, fetch the content for Salesforce, swap it on the website, and show it. The rub is that we released this in 2018, and at the time, the tools that we have now for generating content at scale were not available. And so even though the technology was awesome and it worked, the reality is that marketers didn't have enough bandwidth, time, energy, effort to create essentially 5 by n amount of content for the number of accounts that they wanted to target. So imagine you have 100 accounts you really want to go after. Now you have to create 500 essentially variations of the website. It was next to impossible. Very few users went that deep. And now we see tools like Clay combining with direct CMS integration that allow you to do that. So I implore you to take a look at things like this, because we did find when we released it that it makes a difference. At least then, how much that kind of engagement spike will last, I think, is something that is to be determined as more and more people expect personalization or realize that it's just generative AI doing it. And that's one of the sort of anti-patterns in the space that we operate in, right? All the cool things that you can imagine doing with generative AI may lose some of that effectiveness if everyone does it, or all the consumers come to expect it. So here is just an example so that we could see of what I'm talking about with respect to Clay. What you're seeing here, and I'm going to click into it and I'll have to log in. Let me do that so you can see a little more detail. Give me one sec. I thought I was already logged in. Okay. Hopefully you could see this. So what you're seeing here is just a kind of spreadsheet view of a bunch of records of people I was emailing. But here's the key part. What you're seeing here, these columns are like the DIFY workflow steps. Each of these columns is a ChatGPT step that has some additional prompting information with feed forward from other columns. And so I'm generating personalized emails based on information that's been gathered about them. And so you kind of see here, if I go down the line, it has specific content. I have a backbone email that I've used, and then I'm personalizing that backbone email for each individual person based on what? Well, it's based on a step that is finding news about that company. And so this particular, let's say the Warrior Wellness Group, we didn't find a news article from Google, but we did find one from a different source. And what is that article? Well, it's here. And then I'm classifying whether or not the company referenced in that article is actually the company. And sometimes it's not, sometimes it's a maybe. And so for the ones that actually are the company, I'll go down here below, then we actually look at and confirm that this is the person that we're talking to, that this article specifically mentions that individual and that company. And from that, you can see here, this article, Deep South received a $1.2 million grant. We then carry that forward and use it in the email that we are sending to that individual. So this is a automatically personalized email. Hey, I came across the story about the recent grant that you received. Would love to chat about X, Y, and Z. So that is the power of what's possible with something like this. And I mean, I just wanted to make sure I showed that to you as one of the many tools that are available to you.
This is scraping information from the internet. You actually have not read that article. Before
Correct.
you send out that email, do you go and read that article? Do you invest the time to do that? Is there a step in it? Because it feels like this would just then send out all the yes emails, which look to be numerous, hundreds maybe. Um,
Hundreds, yes.
and so that's personalizing something that's not exactly true because you actually haven't read that, correct?
Correct. So I do recommend a spot check approach to the extent that you read all of the content. And I have done that workflow as well, where I read every single email. I have found that the value isn't quite there other than editing and checking certain nits in the email copy. So it depends on how much scale you're looking for and how much time you have for the particular task. And it really comes down to whether or not that additional investment in time is going to be worth the added responsiveness, or on the downside risk, the avoidance of exposure to someone saying like, hey, I hated your email, or F off, which by the way, they would say anyway, even if you hadn't personalized the email, because people don't like cold outreach emails. So I have
Yeah.
found that the balance for me, my audience, and the goal that I have is to spot check approximately 1 to 2% of the overall copy. And when I say spot check, I'm literally kind of scrolling, clicking into some, reading, and then cross-referencing that with the article and saying, yep, it's right. If I find that there are ones that are wrong, if I go over and I find, geez, there's already 1 or 2 bad errors in my 1 or 2% spot check, then I'll recheck my entire pipeline and I'll try to figure out what's wrong, what's happening with the prompting, what's happening with the article generation. And that is actually one of the things that led me to create this step that you see here, this company identification step. Because
Yeah.
in the early versions of this pipeline, the agent would search an article and it would say, oh, I found it. and it just happened to be a different company that had a similar enough name, right? And then you could imagine lots of the emails were referencing, oh, I saw that you went to the WWE, which is the, what is it, the like World Conservatory site, but it used to be the wrestling organization. And so like, oh, great job flying off the ring. It was so great to see you there. And it's like, what are you talking about? That's not at all related. So it's important that I added this additional step to make sure that it matches and aligns, right? So that's where you have to be very creative in both your QA, but then in your problem solving approach to put guardrails on these AIs so that they do what you think you are asking them to do. Does that answer the question, Leaf?
It does. So, where did you get the list? Where did the list come from?
Let's talk about that in a separate section. The
Sure.
long story short is Apollo, which is a list building and email sending platform, apollo.io. But that is a whole like 45 plus minute topic. And I do have videos on that, so I could send that around to you if you're interested in diving deeper on that part.
Great. I'm curious. Yeah.
Cool. Very
Awesome.
cool.
Thank you.
Okay, I think I told everyone we're going to do the bio break early, but we are coming up on time. So let me just land the plane here. So the flywheel, right? You take a raw asset, whether it's a webinar or call transcript, and I want you to find ways to layer on your generative AI to summarize it, expand it, rewrite it, and then from that, spin out those multiple formats. Always remember to keep it as human authentic as possible, grounded in some insight that you have about the user, about their pain points. And then you could start learning, iterating, and repeating on that. And then the last piece is I want you to think about how you can scale this through different combinations, different permutations, right? So in this here, you might have a webinar, you might have a blog, some call notes, and there's different things you can do with these. You can summarize, rewrite, extract, and as you mix and match these, you can create different outputs. And so many of you perhaps have seen some of those LinkedIn posts where they have this zoomed out view of a canvas and it's like 80 different nodes on DIFY, your favorite tool. And it's like, what is going on? Well, they're doing something like this, right? They're putting one input in at the top and then creating all the permutations that produce outputs, which they can then send out to a CSV. And from that CSV, effectively generate an entire month's worth of a content calendar that you could then schedule using something like Buffer. And so now you could start seeing how when you put all these pieces together, you really can get one person or half a person's time to produce an entire month's worth of content scheduled out, ready to send. Okay, let's move into the bio break portion. What's coming after the bio break is we're going to be building with DIFY. You're going to open up DIFY. I sent out a starter template for you to import, and it's got a blog generator step. You, if you want, optionally can add the atomizer step. You're going to customize these prompts to match what you want them to do. And we have our facilitators joining in a few minutes to guide you, to give you insight, to push you, and get you to experiment with things. So that's where we'll stop. And the last part, as always, you don't have to be an expert. Just do what you can and learn. That's why we're putting you in groups with other people so that you can hear how they're thinking. I think we all got the hang of the facilitated rooms now, but essentially think out loud as much as you can. Think out loud. I'm doing this. I'm trying this. Oh no, I ran into this problem, because that's what allows the facilitator to help you. And that is what allows the other participants to learn from you and vice versa. All right, let's hit into a bio break. We'll hang around for a Q&A if anyone wants to stick around, and then we'll get right into it as soon as our 3 facilitators arrive so we can maximize the amount of time we have. Let's hear if we have any questions, and feel free to walk away if you need that bio break, and we'll kick it off as soon as folks are back. Michael, go for it.
Real quick, it might not be the time on this. I can probably go through the next hour just chat GPT, but still having that error connecting DIFY to chat GPT. Wasn't sure if I had a minute on that, but if not, obviously completely understand.
Gotcha. Alejandro, can you make a separate breakout room for me and like a fourth breakout room that's kind of just technical difficulties, and we can get people to go there if they run into a challenge, and I can help them with that. And then Alejandro, do make the 3 breakout rooms with the same groups as before, and we'll assign facilitators there. Thank you, Michael. Anything else? Any questions for Travis? That flow he showed us? Anything on the
Yeah,
content
can you
you
also
saw?
just point us into where to find the template? I
Yes,
don't know.
it's
I
in
see
the-
the email. I just don't know where that lives. Sorry.
I see. I'm going to paste it into our chat, and that will help us get that going.
Thank you.
I had trouble with that link. Should I pop into that?
Yes.
Technical difficulties.
Yes. Yes. And then let me send that link right now. Any other questions? Go for it.
Mine was just real quick, just around the pricing thing. So I'm using the Chat GPT Plus, and also saw how there was somewhere to track cost on something. Is this sort of a different component when you're using something like DIFY where it might cost a penny, or is it something where you're on Chat GPT Plus for 20 a month, and at a certain point you've used, whatever capabilities you have?
Yes. When you use a third-party tool that's calling your API token from OpenAI or any tool, it is charging you on a per usage, per token basis. So it's metered pricing essentially. And that's why Travis made the point about, hey, it's really important to have instrumentation on those costs, because you build a big enough pipeline, you run it often enough, and you might be surprised to learn that you've got a $40 bill for a day's of work. You just got to be aware of those costs.
Great, thank you.
And then, I just see that I put the chat as a private DM. Let me put it again here. All right, hopefully you can see that. Let me show you what those instructions mean, so that while we're all together, we can see it and you can try to reproduce it. Okay. Let me first click on this. Let me tell you what's happening. So that link I sent you will send you to this YML file. And this YML file, we're going to copy it. We're going to copy the link. And inside of DIFY, we're going to close that one. Inside of DIFY, we're going to go to our workspace, and then we're going to import from DSL file.
Sorry, where did you copy the link from? Not the browser URL.
Yeah.
Oh, you are
the browser. Yeah, just the browser URL.
Okay,
and that's the link that I put into the chat.
Okay.
And then I'll start again. You go into your dashboard, you import from DSL file, click on from URL, click here, paste it, and create. Okay,
Yes.
difference, and that's okay. So it sounds like they have updated DIFY in the background, and so my DSL is an older version, but it still imports. And now what you should see is this workflow that I showed you, and you'll be able to edit these things, you'll be able to run it, etc. Now, one thing that may be different is that I've already set up my account to use ChatGPT 4.0 because I've already connected my API key. And I think, Michael, that's the challenge you ran into. If that happens, then simply switch it back down to their hosted GPT 3.5 Turbo until when you decide to add your API key if you want.
Sorry, can you show that again?
Yep. So in each of the model nodes, there's going to be a model, and you can click into it. And in the model section, use GPT 3.5, because that is one that they host for you for free without you having to put your API tokens. Once you put your API tokens in, you have to go to OpenAI, you have to generate an API key. If this is the first time you do that, you probably won't have had any usage in it. And as a result, they're going to rate limit how often you can call it, what you can do with it, as a result of them trying to prevent abuse and fraud and spam. And so that's probably the issue you ran into. So the easiest, cleanest solution today is just to set up their hosted model, which won't be as powerful, but to demonstrate the points and get you going, it should be enough.
So I'm not able to, I don't get a drop down for GPT 3.5.
Okay. then we will discuss that in the technical, or if you want to share your screen now, I can try to take a look at it and see what's going on there. I probably should have done a dry run from a fresh account so that we didn't have this particular issue. What I'm going to do is I'm going to recreate that YML file that you all can use using their preloaded events here.
It allows me to search for a model, but I can't. But even if I do 3.5, no model found.
Okay.
GPT, no model provider settings.
So yours probably looks like this. You load it and it says, oh no, you don't have this plugin, right? And that's what you're saying. That it says no model found. This is probably what you're running into.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So what I want to do is use their models instead of our own. Okay. I think if we use, let's just try. I'm going to just try to use one of their hosted models and see if that allows us to get it done. Okay. Forgive me, team. I assumed that this was a lot simpler than this, and I had my mind set up already, and so it's not as easy peasy as I'd hoped. What you need to do is go install that functionality, and then let me see if they have a free one.
I wonder if you do kind of install the OpenAI package here, if you may have access to models without entering an API key.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Once I removed my model and reinstall the OpenAI one, I see that I have a quota of credits that they give me for free. That's what it is.
Yeah.
I just
So you can still use it. You don't need to input your own API key, and you may have fewer options for models, but you'll still be able to select something which will accomplish the task and be functional.
Thank you. And so to recap what that looks like, when you go in here, model provider settings, you should see one called OpenAI among the many listed, and then click on install. And that will install their model, and they'll give you a few message quotas without setting up your own API key. And as Taya mentioned, it might limit which models you have, but for our purposes, that's okay.
Okay, great. And we're installing the OpenAI model at the very top.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And later you can experiment and try all the models, Llama, Anthropic, etc., and try different ones.
I just did that and I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different ChatGPT 3.5 versions.
Just pick any of them.
And my guess is they might have 4.0 mini also, but I'm not sure.
They do have 4.0 mini, yeah.
Okay. Then 4.0 mini is a great one to use that is given to you for free on those quota credits. Okay, later, great. I will put together a video that shows you how to get your API key integrated if you want to keep going deeper on this end so that you can experiment.
And any of these parameters, temperature, TOP, presence?
Leave those all as presets. We'll have a separate session where I'll go into what those mean specifically. For now, not relevant to today's session.
Cool. And so we need to do this for each of the LLMs.
Yeah, there's 2.
Okay, great. Awesome.
All right.
Sweet. Thank you, man.
Cool.
So, this is a good part.
Go ahead, Trace.
So we also, I noticed on one of yours, you had one of those workflows you showed earlier in your talk. You also had agents in there. Will you also do a video?
That may have been a previous week where I added knowledge retrieval and agents into the workflows. Yeah. Today, we're just going to work on a simple workflow. We'll keep layering on more complexity as the weeks go on.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Cool. All right, 10:07. If you needed a bio break, I hope you took it. Let's get into it. I know we have our facilitators here with us. Alejandro, and we have our breakout rooms ready as well. I'm going to take that as a yes. All right, let me introduce our facilitators. And first, I'll start with Taya, and then I'll go to Marion, and then Chase. I think I said I'm going to introduce you, but you do it best. In that order, Taya, if you can introduce yourself, then Marion, then Chase, so that we can do our breakouts.
Sure. I'm Taya. I have met many of you already. This is not my first session, so I'm excited to dive back in. I have an AI consulting company called Futureproof, and we help organizations figure out how to put AI into their operations. So all of this is very exciting for me, and excited to dig into it.
Awesome. And then let me go to Marion, a fellow AI pioneer. Hi,
Hey
Marion.
guys. I'm Marion. It's great to meet all of you. I'm looking forward to meeting you individually in our breakout room. I run a startup. We do code compliance for architects, which is very wonky, but in a previous life, I did marketing. So that's why Rodrigo thought I would be a good fit to talk to you guys about this today.
Cool. Let's go to Chase.
Hey everyone, my name's Chase. Pleasure to be here. My background is in chemistry and math. Dabbled in commercial real estate investing and brokerage, and now I have an AI automation agency. Primarily focus on small to medium-sized businesses, bringing custom solutions to them, and also working on voice bots for property management.
Excellent. You all already met Travis. Travis, do you want to hang around and do any facilitation? I know that wasn't the full ask, so if you got to run, totally cool.
Yeah, I can hang around.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so everyone knows what's going on. We're breaking out into our facilitated sections. The first section, just kind of get into the intros, keep those quick and snappy so that we can get our hands dirty. With that, I release you. Alejandro, please do the honors and send everyone to their rooms.